Hello, welcome to Movers, Shakers, Designers, Makers. I'm Steve Carpenter. I'm Dean of the College of Arts and Architecture at Penn State. Today, I'm talking with Patrick Fabian. Patrick earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in acting at Penn State in 1987. Fans of the TV drama Better Call Saul will recognize Patrick from his portrayal as attorney Howard Hamlin. But as this conversation will reveal, Patrick's role in that series is just one of many roles that have contributed to his success as an actor. So in addition to being a successful actor and an alumnus of the college, what brings us here today for this conversation with Patrick is his selection by the School of Theater as the recipient of the 2020 College of Arts and Architecture Alumni Award. This recognition was slated for last year in fall of 2020, but like so many other plans in this past year, since mid-March, that event was postponed, and we'll instead celebrate Patrick and the other recipients in November of 2021. So here we go. Patrick, we're looking forward to having a chat with you in person, but for now, we're going to do it right here through Zoom. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And you know what? I think the adaptability of everybody in the pandemic by going to Zoom and figuring out how to continue out, how to connect and have art and share art. I don't mind doing that one more time, but I am absolutely looking forward to being back at Penn State main campus in the fall.
Sounds good. We're looking forward to having you back. Absolutely. So here for this conversation, we're going to talk about a range of things. We'll get to some Penn State specific questions near the end. And of course, we're going to dive into your career and some topics during this conversation related to acting, of course. But before we do that, I'd love to go back before Penn State. I'd like to take a visit to how the acting bug found you. Essentially, you want to know more about your origin story. So I'm curious about how you grew up and where and how acting found young Patrick. Can you give us some insight there?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I'm from central Pennsylvania. I grew up in New Cumberland, across the river from Harrisburg. Anybody who's gone through PA know you got to go through 83 or 81 to get to where you want to go. But I grew up across. Very idyllic childhood, great town. I got into music in fourth grade when they used to give out instruments to kids. And I ended up playing the trombone. So I got involved with the band. And for me, that was the beginning of like the idea of the collective of literally, let's go put on a show. And it was also the beginning of the knowledge of it takes a village to make something cool, right? So you have your part. Sometimes you get to shine, but mostly you're there to help support the piece. And so I did some plays in like elementary school, like we all did, playing the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, something like that. Right. But in middle school, I expanded more into music, with singing, chorus, and stuff like that. And then in high school, I continued on. I played a little bit professionally in a small jazz band that was in central PA. I became president of the marching band in high school. that's the dude I was. So, and in our high school at Cedar Cliff, that wasn't like a geeky, well, it was geeky, but it wasn't a bad thing because we were winning awards. We were a big marching band. We had like 250 musicians on the field. It was a massive band. And we go to state championships. And again, the idea of the collective, you practice, you work hard. You're also making music, which, is such a beautiful art form and really connects people. It's a second language, right? Mm-hmm. And along the way, I started doing some plays in high school as well. And then I started doing musicals, which is a great fusing between music and acting. And as much as I loved having a trombone in my mouth, and I did, I loved being in front of the marching band and playing when you did parades. We went to Washington, D.C., did the Cherry Blossom Parade. And, band took me all over the state. And we played in jazz bands, we played orchestras. I played string bass in the orchestra. And that was only because I knew how to read bass clef. And so I adapted it to being able to play that for a little bit. But then I got up on stage and I got to shed the instruments. And the same idea of like when you played in a band or presented something on the marching field, when you finished, there was an immediate response from the audience. You knew if you were doing well, you knew if you were not doing so well. But when it really worked, when it really sang, that was electric. And that was a sensation I liked being a part of. The same thing started to happen in musicals as well. I got up there and all of a sudden, unencumbered with the horn, I found myself doing the Pajama Game and Hello Dolly, real old stalwarts. But the kind of things that that a kid could grab his teeth into, sink his teeth into, rather. David Dietz, I want to give a shout out. He's still in the area in Harrisburg. He was a committed educator, and he didn't take high school students lightly. He made us, he took us seriously, and he made us work, and he immediately imbued us with the idea of the reward comes if you put in the hard work. I remember tap dancing. I remember, doing rehearsal. And you'd think, what are you doing? And we worked as much as any athlete in high school. And the payoff was you had 3 nights to do a show. And he had us worked up to speed. So our shows got to be really sort of renowned. And that's an old man talking 30 years. They were really renowned in the Central PA area. But they were.
Key vocabulary word there, Patrick. Thanks. You're going to drop some more on us today, I'm sure.
Did you hear about the production of Hello, Dolly? I was Barnaby Tucker. Anyways, I had a lot of fun and I got inspired. And so I was going to be a musician. I announced to my parents that I was going to leave as soon as high school was over, I was going to go straight to New York, because at that point, my dream was to be like a first chair trombonist in a Broadway pit band. I now have children who are 8 and 10, and I cannot imagine what that must sound like.
I tell you what, I don't think I've heard that sentence before. You said a first chair trombonist in a what pit band?
Pit band. That was the goal. And all of those words are like Latin to my parents. They're like, what? My parents, great parents, love them, still together, still alive, living in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. They came to every band rehearsal. Every band show. They saw like the worst plays and the worst concerts ever, right? Because, you're in elementary school. People were learning their instruments. They didn't even know how to tune them. But my parents, God bless them, they came to everything. They supported me and my brother being musicians like that. But when I announced that I wanted to go to New York City, not go to college and just be a musician, the restraint they had by not saying, are you out of your mind? Because it wasn't something that they were experienced with. My parents were both the first people in the branches of their family to ever go to college, and they put a value on higher education without a doubt. And so then I came back and announced I didn't want to be a musician. That was nonsense. Who wants to go to New York and be a trombonist? I want to be an actor instead. Yeah. So they were like, what? So what they did is convince me that I needed to go get some more education. And what the bargain basically was, they would help me go to school. But maybe we would go to a university that had other interests. I wanted to go to an art school. I ended up at Penn State. And the reason I ended up at Penn State is I'd gone to a bunch of different schools to sort of browse, as you do. Like went to North Carolina School for the Arts. I went out to Carnegie Mellon. I looked at Shippensburg. I looked at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And lastly, I went to Penn State. I think I was reluctant to go to Penn State. I think, honestly, the truth is I was scared, because if you started theater at Penn State, you had to go main campus. Mm-hmm. And that was big. It was big back then, and I know it's even bigger now. But I went there, and Bill Kelly, who is still very much around, Bill Kelly was there, and this is a long time ago, because he takes us on a bit of a tour of the facility. But basically what I remember is this, and this may be a bit gilded the lily of the age. Bill Kelly had a Camel light in his fingertips and a Zippo lighter that he did not light until the very end of our conversation. But I remember the sound of that Zippo because he would sort of flick it every now and then. And he turned to me and he goes, so I understand you want to be an actor. And I said, yes, I want to be an actor. He goes, great. Well, if you come here, we'll do our best. And I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we'll do our best. And then he turned to my mother and father and he said, I assume you're the ones who are paying for this, yes? And my father, who is my dad and mom, who had been to all these different sort of art schools where people were talking about how we were going to roll on the floor and be yellow and how they were going to nurture my inner child. I mean, a real art cell. I'm sort of rolling my eyes. But to think about my parents hearing this, it just was alien to them. And this was the first person, the first administrator to look him in the eye and be like, so you're footing the bill, huh? My mom and dad perked up and he said, well, here's what I can tell you. We'll take your son. And if he's talented, we can make him a little bit better. But I got to tell you, it's a tough road out there and there's no guarantees. But if you want to spend the money, you'll have a good time. And it was just, it blew me away. It blew me away, his freshness about it. He also said this, which got my father's attention, I remember. He said, look, it's really hard. And this is a big school. and he'll find out real quick whether he can swim, sink or swim. And he goes, and that's part of the education as well. So on the drive home, of course, I was sort of scared about hearing sink or swim. And he wasn't paying enough attention to me. I'm sorry. At the end, he lit a cigarette.
Oh, there it is.
Explode. So I went away going like, well, the professor smokes. That's kind of cool, isn't it? That's edgy. That's artist. But he said this whole sink and swim thing, and it was a big campus. And I was like, My parents had both gone to Indiana University of Pennsylvania. So had my brother. My parents went there when it was a teacher's college. And so as a 17-year-old boy who definitely wanted to go to New York and be a trombonist, and then thought he was going to be an actor. It's funny. All of a sudden, Penn State seemed a little big, and I was a little intimidated. And I said to my dad, I think I want to go to IUP. I think I want to go there, thinking that would get his approval.
Right.
My father said, well, I don't know anything about acting. I don't know what you're about to do. But it seems to me you better find out whether you have it or you don't have it sooner than later. But you do what you want to do. Great logic. That stewed with me for about 3 days. And then I announced that I wanted to go to Penn State all on my own. And he said, okay, great, we'll do that. And then that's how I got to Penn State. I mean, I want to just sort of backtrack for a second. The idea of what drove me from the beginning was, some people get involved in a collective in football or baseball or soccer or whatever, or they become solo, right? They become painters and they go a little more within, or they become writers where it's generated from here and that. For me, I like the tactileness of being around people, of having a collective rehearsal and then presenting something and presenting that, like the caveman in the fire in the dark, the storytelling, right? I like being the conduit of the story. I wasn't a story creator. I was a story interpreter, whether that was with my horn or with my mouth and my body. Somebody else was writing it and somebody else was directing it. And I was sort of that middleman. And I liked that. But what I really liked was the idea of like, okay, here we are. Here we are at a table. We're going to take a look at these pages. And from that first rehearsal where we turn the page and we read the words for the first time, and then you start breaking down stuff and then you start doing things. Now, we were doing those in high school without really knowing what we were doing. We were being very much directed towards things, almost result oriented. But then I got to school, and then school became the peeling back of, well, how do you do this? Because there is a way to do it. It is a craft, and I believe it's a craft. And so that's why I went to Penn State, because Bill Kelly told me he'd teach me how to be an actor. And guess what? He was right.
Click. Oh, there's so much to that origin story. I really connect with the collaboration piece of it. As a former athlete who played soccer for most of his childhood and through college and post-college, that teamwork piece, that collaboration piece is such a central part of how you get to frame your own abilities and then your abilities and contributions within the larger group. I really appreciate your comments about your teacher and also your parents who set, no pun intended, set the stage for the ways to think through what it is that you wanted to do. I talked to numerous conversations I had over the years with parents with me about, well, my child is interested in becoming an artist or an art teacher. So my background is art education. And so, they have concerns, not unlike some of the concerns you voiced about your parents having. And it's about not getting in the way. It's about getting out of the way and facilitating and encouraging and allowing people to find what it is that they need. And I love the idea of you better know sooner rather than later if this is right. Because the longer it takes, there's other kinds of disappointment and other opportunities that are missed. So that origin story is brilliant on so many levels, not the least of which is Bill Kelly in his role as car salesman. But the key piece to that, Patrick, to me, is he was being direct and making it upfront and clear. And so, as we think through our recruiting efforts here in the college now and trying to encourage enrollments, I'm not sure we're going to go the cigarette and lighter route, but I do think it's important to be very direct and very clear. So showing families in prospective students, the studio spaces, having them meet with students, having them meet directly with faculty members. It's crucial, right? It's not about fabricating what people want to hear. It's about, look, this is what it's going to take, and this is what we're about, and being forthcoming with it. I really appreciate the complexity of what you shared.
Sure. And just two more things. I think one, my parents were pleased at being in Penn State because they were like, okay, so you want to be in the theater program? We just heard from the head of it, or at least a teacher in it. And if it doesn't work out for my son, if my son decides, if my 17-year-old son changes his mind, possibly, he's at a great university that has a wide variety of things to choose from if he wants to move into something else, or if he wants to move into something else, like maybe not on stage, but off stage. Maybe directing becomes a thing, maybe writing becomes a thing, but then he'll at least be in a space where he has the ability to do that. And I think that appealed to them. And then one last, Bill Kelly, we sat in the main stage in the first week, and all the new students, graduate and undergrad, were there. And he gave the paper chase speech, basically. He said, look to your left, that person will be gone in 3 weeks. Look at that person to your right, they'll be gone. The person in front of you will be gone in 6 months. The guy behind you will be gone in 2 years. And one of you, maybe one of you in this entire auditorium might be able to pay your rent at this job about 5 years after you get out of school. And all of us sat there and go,
right.
And I'm like, okay, it's going to be me. Sorry, you all have to leave, but that was important to hear too. It was just important to sort of have a dart thrown out there saying, like, I dare you to follow this.
Mm-hmm.
I dare you to follow this. And then from that idea, I was just like, oh, I'll just do what these people say. Whatever they say, I'm going to arm myself, so when I get out there, I've got some armor.
That's it. I love it. Okay, so we could spend so much time talking about that piece of the experience. I want to move ahead a bit, though. So you're at Penn State, and by the way, the idea of if the acting thing doesn't work out, if the direction that you're thinking about doesn't work out, but you're still interested in staying at Penn State, there are other possibilities here. That's one of the pieces that has really been a piece of the narrative that we've shared. So that piece has lasted for a number of years, but. So you're at Penn State, and you earn your BFA in acting, graduate in 1987. That's the same year I graduated with my BFA in visual art. So it's highly likely, I was at Slippery Rock University, so it's highly likely the same weekend in the spring in 1987, we were walking across the stage in different parts of the state. And so thinking about that undergraduate experience, if you were to lift, as they say, 10,000 feet up for the big moves after, right? So, you walk across the stage and then there's the world in front of you. Where did you first land? Where was the next step? And then the next break? And so in other words, take us on that next bit of the trajectory right out of graduation.
Well, you spend 4 years at college and as an undergrad. At this time, when I was there was a graduate program, and much like life, which was great, guess who got the lead roles? Most of the graduate students did, and the undergraduates were even the BFAs, because there was a BA program and we were the BFAs, right? So smell me. But in the end, there was only a handful of roles for you to be able to grab on main stage. What you ended up doing was, the reason I ask about room 6 is because I did a lot of my work. My best work was at midnight at 6. We had a thing on Friday and Saturday nights. I built sets. I learned how to hang lights. I learned how to paint flats. I learned how to sew costumes. And then I learned how to be, in the background. I watched Hamlet from the side. I got to be the player king. Michael Connolly got to be the actual king, Laertes, and the king. Laertes was played by Chris Foster. And I mentioned that because he did that speech at the end. And then years later, I literally, and by the way, you're absolutely allowed to do this, stole every moment he had created for me. Because as a young man, I was impressed with what he had done. And so when it came time to do the monologue, I was like, oh, why do I think like that? I think like that because Chris Foster did it so damn well. So I would stand on stage. I was in all the great plays on stage left and stage right. And Bill Kelly, we did Shakespeare, and we would change it up. We did an Italian version of Much Ado About Two Gents of Verona, where we sang "What's the Matter You? What's the Matter Me?" I don't think you can do that these days, but we did that then. It was fun. I did the Beau Stratagem in the. Now I'm just talking about what I did. So you're done with college. I've done a lot of work, and I've done a lot of, I'm prepared, I'm ready to go. Most of the friends I had wanted to go to New York, the artists, right? We're going to go to New York, that's where actors go. Or someone to go to the regional theater. That was never my bag. I wanted to go to New York, and I was going to go do that. Also, I had followed a redhead there for a summer in between my junior and senior year. That's a different story, but I got a taste of New York City, and I thought, this is what you do. Tom Forrell is his name. He was a graduate student. He was an older graduate student, had been a designer for a long time. And he had come back to get his degree. He put on a one-man show about Noel Coward, who was somebody who I did not know who that was. And then he educated me on that. And then just everybody was making their decisions about going to New York. I'm going to go to New York. And we had gone and auditioned for grad schools and stuff like that, but I was not interested in school. I had just done 4 years of school, and I didn't want to go to school again. And Tom Forrell took me aside, and he took me to a mirror, and he said, "What do you see?" And I was like, I don't know what I said. And he goes, "Well, what I see is a young, fairly good looking boy. And let me tell you, New York will always be there for you to go suffer for your art. But there's only one chance you have to go be young and beautiful and see if you could be a movie star. Go west." And, you know, we had been doing theater. You understand? We were doing acting, talking about the depth of the soul, the human condition. No one was talking about being on TV, certainly, or about being in the movies, really, because on a practical level, I was being trained for the stage. All my work was based on the stage. And this is 30 years ago, by the way, too. We didn't have iPhones and access, you know, the idea of doing movies and television was something you would have to work in a different way to get to. But all my heroes as actors were always stage oriented anyways. And nobody was going west. And all of a sudden I was like, well, that sounds like a good idea. Cal State Long Beach is a university out here south of Los Angeles. It is not in LA, even though they will tell you it's really close to LA. It is not. You might as well be in Iowa as close as you are to Long Beach. But I got suckered in on that. And I say suckered in that I talked to Ashley Carr, who's the head of the program out there. And he saw me audition for the Erdas up in New York. And he was very clear, much like Bill Kelly. He goes, well, you have a nice bag of tricks. You might be able to make a buck at this. You might not. But your classics are a little bit weak, and you've got some mechanics. Anyways, he basically was selling his program. And it was a 2-year graduate program. More importantly, it was going to fly me across the Mississippi River for the first time towards California. And so I thought, I'll go. And I tell you what, if I don't like school, I've already been to school. So I'll just move up to LA. So that's what I'm going to do. But I got out there, and what I discovered was now I was a graduate student. And so therefore, all of a sudden, I was getting all the lead roles. So in a 2-year program, I basically had a repertory theater program where I did lead roles, 2-3 shows every semester. In 2 years, I had my master's degree, which means I could teach, which made my parents thrilled. I'm like, you know, if I get a master's degree, Dad, I can teach at a university. And they were like, great, go get it. My father has a master's in biology, a hard science. But what I looked at it was rep, because, and this is back to Penn State. So I go out to graduate school. Well, guess what? I'd already been in the BFA program. I'd kind of gone to graduate school. I kind of gone to Penn State's graduate school. I was lucky enough to share a lot of the classes with the graduate students and the graduate teachers. So when I got out there, it wasn't like I was retreading or repeating. There was always something more to learn, and there was always a different viewpoint. And it's always good to have different critiques of your work. I love outside eyes. It informs what you do. But really, it was there for rep for me. And so then, after 6 years of higher education, rolling on the floor, being a tree, finding my inner self, knowing the IPA, being able to hold a spear in the Beau Stratagem, and also being a Greek drama where I'm wearing a beard that we didn't have enough to have the mustache. So I kind of look like an Amish guy, like John Cope's corn. I move up to Los Angeles, and guess what? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Oh, another actor has showed up to the city of Los Angeles. No red carpet, no nothing. So I do what I was supposed to do. I was told in both by Bill Kelly and both by Ashley Carr, my educators. Again, the educators helped put things in my brain that when they actually happened, I wasn't surprised. Oh no, they haven't welcomed me? I was told that was not going to happen. What I was told was it was going to be tough. What I was told was go get a job. What I was told is take care of yourself, pay your rent, figure out your gasoline money, figure out your food, and then bam, 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 bam. Make sure you read the trades, make sure you audition, get a part of a theater company, and all these other things. So all my extra time when I wasn't working was on the acting end of it. So I found an acting troupe and I started apprenticing with that, Pacific Resident Theater Ensemble outside over in Venice. They still exist there over in Abercrombie and Venice Boulevard in Venice, California. And I built sets and I hung lights, but guess what? I knew how to build sets. I knew how to hang lights. So the responsibilities, I no longer had a department head. They just said, "They're the lights.
Do it."
And I was able to, because Penn State had taught me that, I knew how to tie my wrench to my belt, my jeans, so it didn't fall when I was up on an A-frame. I knew how to select gels. I knew how to wire a soundboard, kind of. But you know what I mean? I also knew how to ask for help. And I knew how to be I knew how to be in a troupe. I knew how to be part of a collective. I knew what rehearsal was. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there who say they want to be actors and performers who've just been looking at YouTube, or think the thing they thought of and they did once that got some applause is a deal. Maybe that works. I don't know about that, but I know about craft, and I know about working, and I know about being in class. And I know that pays dividends. And it pays dividends in stacking the deck in your favor. And in the end, that's the only thing you've got. So much is out of your control and so much is out of your hands. What is in your hands is stacking the deck in your favor. So what do? We wait tables, you make a living. What do? You answer audition ads in the trades or now on the internet. For what? For student films. Well, they don't pay anything. Yeah, I know. For what? For non-union work. Why? Because you don't have a union card. Well, for what? Oh, how about for the LA Shakespeare Festival? They'll hire you for nothing and they'll work you 10 hours a day. But after 2 years of doing that, they made me the assistant stage manager in my second year, and they gave me the role of Moth in A Love's Labor's Lost. And we got to perform at the John Ensign Ford Theater, which is right across the freeway from the Hollywood Bowl, an old amphitheater that's open air, built back in the 1920s for Easter pageant plays. And I found myself doing Shakespeare Under the Stars in Los Angeles. And by making me assistant stage manager after putting in my 2 years time apprenticeship, that gave me my equity card. And for me, that was the card. That means I was no longer, I was still waiting tables, but I was an actor. I was a union actor, and I was a stage union actor. And that meant I was making progress. That meant I was moving somewhere. And I'll wrap this section up with that. So I'm waiting tables, doing all that. I'm doing this play, and my friends who are working with me, because we're all pulling like 12-hour shifts. 12 shifts a week, morning and lunch and stuff like that. So it's hard to feather in stuff. And I stopped rehearsing during the day because I stopped waiting during the day so I could go rehearse the Shakespeare thing. And then I give up my nighttime shift in order when we perform. And my friend's like, "Dude, you got to make money." And I'm like, "Dude, I didn't come out to be a waiter. I came out to do this." So was it tough? Yes. Was it hard? Yes. Was it scrapey by? Yeah. Was it the saddest story in the world? No, because I was doing what I loved, and it was really, really fun and exciting. So I do the Shakespeare thing Under the Stars. Quick aside, we're doing Much Ado About Nothing, and it's running long because it's running long. Right across the street is the Hollywood Bowl, like I said. Well, they shoot off fireworks in the summer. So we're in the fifth act of Much Ado About Nothing, and all of a sudden fireworks start going off across the 101. Our audience is sitting here, and they hear the fireworks. You literally see them turn around and start looking at the fireworks. I forget the gentleman who it was, but he was wonderful. He played Benedict, and he goes, "They're late this evening, but nonetheless, for your enjoyment, let us sit and pause." And we all sat down, watched the fireworks at the Hollywood Bowl. And when they finished, he goes, "You're welcome." And then we continued with the play. And I fell in love with, we fell in love with performing when that moment happened, and because I did that show, one of the leads, I was holding spears, by the way, moving furniture, but I had a couple of bits. I had a couple of jokes, and I made sure that I hit them each and every night. And the reason I say that is because, they say there's no small parts, and there are none. You make what you make of it. Well, I was going to make sure that the 5 bits I had got 5 laughs. And I would count every night. Did I get 3 for 5, 4 for 5, 5 for 5? So somebody who was an agent came to see the lead in the show, who was playing Beatrice. And then afterwards, that woman, Jean St. Calvary, God rest her soul, came backstage and she said, "Do you have an agent?" And I said, "No." And she handed me her card. And she said, "Call me tomorrow." Well, I didn't know what that meant, really. I kept the card, thankfully, and I called her the next day and I said, "Hi, I'm the guy who's doing the jokes." And she goes, Yes. She goes, "So tell me about yourself." I told her about going to Penn State. I told her about going to Cal State Long Beach. I told her about waiting tables, because I'm sure that's what the agent wanted to hear about, an actor waiting tables. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And she said, well, look, you're green and you don't have much on your resume, so I can't sign you. But what I can do is hip pocket you. I said, what's that? She goes, that means I'll send you out on auditions. And we'll just see if you can book something. And I said, oh, that sounds good to me. I knew how to audition. And she goes, great. She goes, what are you doing tomorrow? Have you ever been to Paramount? No, I have not. And this is an old time when you didn't have a phone. It was called the Thomas Guide, which was basically a big paper phone map. It was Google Maps only in paper form. She said, you have a Thomas Guide. And so she would send me the appointment. I'm sorry, she wouldn't send it to me. She would give it to me over the phone. And then I would drive out after they were done for the business day. And at 9 o'clock, their assistants would leave a cardboard box out in the parking garage, and they would have all your sides because they would only have one copier in their office. I didn't have a copy machine. We didn't do that. So I would drive out over to Westwood, root through the box, pick up my manila envelope, and then drive back home. And then I go to Paramount the next day. I'd never been on the Paramount lot. And I had a drive on. And I go through the gates from the Sunset Boulevard. And if you haven't seen Sunset Boulevard, kids, go watch it. It's a great film. You go right through those gates. And you park in the parking garage. And there's the parking lot where actually they filmed Jaws. They filled it with water. And then there's the backdrop right there. It's right there. And the tower and the whole 9 yards. And I was like, whoa. And then I go to an audition, and it's for Doogie Howser. And Doogie Howser's Neil Patrick Harris when he was really small, my young friends. And I walk into a room, and guess what? There's 20 of me. And that's just the 11 o'clock hour. There's 20 of me. And I mean, me, blonde haired, blue eyed, 22 years old. Mm-hmm. We're all weirdly wearing almost the same thing because we're 20 and we don't have any idea. And we're 20. And I sit there, and you would think, oh, this is very intimidating. And you'd be right. It is very intimidating. Except I didn't know enough to be intimidated because I looked around and I didn't recognize anybody and didn't know what was going on. But here's the thing. I knew how to audition. I've been auditioning for 6 years. I knew what it was to prepare, and I'd prepared. I'd gotten to bed early, so my eyes didn't look baggy. I'd memorized my work. I'd made choices on my work. I'd done all the things that you're supposed to do when you audition for a play and when you audition for anything anyways. And so when they called my name, when they walked in, they said, do you have any questions? I said, no. And then I sat down. Now, the room was different. There was a camera, and there were 6 other people, and there was notebooks and all this stuff. But my scene partner was right there. She was the woman right next to, she was casting director. And I'm like, oh, that's my scene partner. Oh, I know how to do that. So then I auditioned. And then I walked out of there, and I went to a payphone, a tall phone booth with my quarters. And I called and I said, she goes, oh, how did it go? I said, I think I got it. And she said, I'm sure you did. But just in case, have you ever been to Fox? What are you doing tomorrow? And of course, I didn't get Doogie Howser. And I didn't get the first 14 things I auditioned for without a doubt. But then I did book something. And then I booked a pilot. And then I quit waiting tables. And then I started being a professional actor, and they signed me. And that all came from being part of a theater company when I got out of college that then got me into the mindset of getting into a Shakespeare festival, which made me exposed to somebody who was keen. It's all a crooked line of how you end up where you're at. But that was my break. And I think that kind of break, the specifics of it are different. The stories are different now. But the idea of saying yes and putting yourself out there for the possibility of something to occur. And then, of course, thanks to Penn State, when the moment arrives, I am prepared. I know what I'm doing. I don't know how to get to Paramount, and I don't know what the tower means, and I don't know who this casting director is, and I don't know who these guys are who look just like me. I don't know any of that, and I can let that get to my head, and that's a whole different subject about how to handle yourself. Mm-hmm. But when it came down to the nuts and bolts, I know how to audition. I know how to stack the deck in my favor when it comes to that. And so walking to every room since then, even to this day, I feel like, well, I was educated at Penn State. I have an advantage when I walk in that room. You may look just like me. You may just like me. You may look younger. You may have better teeth. But I went to Penn State, and I know what I'm doing. Wow, that sounds like an advertisement. Dun, 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 dun. Bring the logo up. We are.
Cue the music and the logo. But what you're talking about is there's no simple singular answer other than it's all part of this big project. Be prepared. Take the input that you receive from all different sources, right? The experiences, the individuals, it all becomes part of that material that you work with. But it's about this, it's about a bigger project. It's not about, okay, in 8 years, XYZ 1, 2, 3. You're saying you have to be ready and prepared. Opportunities show up, but if you're not prepared for the opportunity, it's just another moment, right? You have to be able to walk through and into that opportunity. So I love it. You reminded me of payphones and paper maps and having the directions, the driving directions written down. Turn left, turn right, turn left. You could miss exits.
There, right? You hope you wrote it down correctly, or what did I write down? And then all of a sudden you're like, what am I doing here? And your options are limited. Now you're pulling over. Now you're calling on a payphone.
That's right.
Right? It's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it a 6? Is it an 8? What was that number? Yeah. So let's press on a little bit here. So from that origin story and from that break, and you did the pilot and you did this and you did that, a long list of credits emerges, right? A long list of acting gigs that you've had is built. We look back, among those roles is, your role in Better Call Saul, memorable for the viewers, certainly because of in recent memory here, and looking at it as a contemporary piece, but certainly over the years there are numerous parts that you've played, numerous roles. Choosing one among all your children or all of your experiences is difficult, but is there one that seems satisfying in a way that might be unusual, or satisfying in a way that people who know your work might not realize it was satisfying?
Well, you say that, and the truth is, it's a one-word answer. Xena, the warrior princess, without a doubt, comes to mind. And the reason it does is, if you take a look at IMDb and you see my credits, you'll see exactly what the dean was just talking about. There's a large garden variety of work out there that I have done along the way, because I like to say yes, and saying yes is interesting and fun. It is not all Emmy worthy or Emmy award-winning work. There's a lot of stuff that's not great, but every job had its value and has its value. Currently, I'm on Better Call Saul. That's 27 years down the line on a career. It's the first time I've been a series regular in all that time.
First time as a regular, is that what you said, in a series?
Yeah, I've been a recurring, and I've been signed on as a regular to about 13 or 14 different pilots that never went. But it's really my first time as a series regular that's been broadcast. And that's a long wait. Along the way, we watched all the people become who they became. Like, I auditioned for Friends, but I didn't become one of them. I auditioned for ER, but I didn't become one of them. I auditioned for Grey's Anatomy, but I got the guest star on all those shows later on. But you start off in your early 20s and you all want to be Brad Pitt. And it turns out that there already is somebody who's playing Brad Pitt, and he's doing a really good job of it. You know what I mean? And along the way, you start looking back and you're like, oh, well, what have I done? Well, I've done a lot. Is it all the noteworthy? It is to me, because each job gives you something. Each job is a collective of something. And nobody goes into it going like, boy, this is terrible. We all think this is terrible. Let's spend money on this terrible thing. You know what I mean? It isn't until the end where you're like, oh, that didn't quite work out the way we wanted it. And there's plenty of blame to go around on all of those things, which is why I go back to Xena, the warrior princess. You say, what's one of the best things I've ever done? Well, in terms of what I've done and what I got into the business for, the adventure of it all, the what if, the saying yes. I say yes to Xena, the warrior princess, and they fly you to New Zealand. I go to New Zealand, the other end of the earth. And I get there, and the makeup trailer is a converted school bus. And they're so nice, and they put all this tan bronzer on me. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, love, it'll make your eyes blue and your white teeth whiter. And I was like, okay. And then they put me in leather gauntlets and tied pants on. And then I beat up the bad guys, and I kiss Xena, and I swoop in, and I spend 3 weeks in New Zealand, and they paid me. And you have no idea how many people watch Xena, by the way. That's what I found out. People watch Xena, people watch Star Trek Voyager, people watch Burn Notice, and it reruns and it touches people. And again, going back to the idea of like being part of stories and storytelling, well, guess what? Xena tells a lot of stories and reaches a lot of people, and I had a blast. I had a load of fun, and I couldn't believe my good fortune. I decided to be an actor. And, I look like, I usually get paid. I'm the guy who gets put in a suit. Like if there's a Western, I'm not the sheriff. I'm the guy from back East who comes out to tell them they're sold. I mean, that's just the deal. Sometimes you have to know who you are, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be Errol Flynn, but I was on Xena for 2.5 weeks. Mm-hmm. I got to be Errol Flynn. And if you don't know who Errol Flynn is, ERROL, go look him up. Yeah. The Black Swan. Yeah. And so there's, this goes back to my friend Tom. I said, go west, see if you can be a movie star. Turns out I wasn't a movie star. That's okay. Mm-hmm. I got to be Errol Flynn for 2 weeks, and I still get to be a suit guy now. And now I'm on something that is critically acclaimed and has a worldwide audience. And, the table is set so well for me with the wardrobe, the way it's shot, and the words, and my acting partners. And I'd like to think that after 27 years, I have an idea of what I bring to the table as well. And so it's infinitely satisfying to work on something good. But I also know from being in this business, and that means the arts, it's cyclical, right? I got the job, the excitement of that. We're running the job. Well, now I'm in my final season. I'm in the final season of Better Call Saul. And guess what I'm thinking? What any actor would be thinking. I'm never going to work again. Yeah. That's it. And you go, oh, no, of course you are. They're going to give you don't know. And I don't know. So I'm going to enjoy the job I have at the moment. I'm going to prepare for the next opportunity I have. Only this time I'm going to have to watch out for that chip on my shoulder that's going to be, don't you know who I think I am? I'm the guy from Better Call Saul. You should just give this to me. Well, guess what? There's still 100 of me right behind me who are prepared, who have gone to sleep and done their homework, who will take that job from me. Not in a malicious way, but in a, I want that job too thing. So what was fun? It was fun being Xena. It was fun being Errol Flynn for 2.5 weeks, because for all the times that I drove, oh my God, Diagnosis Murder and Medium, 2 shows that you may or may not know. Medium ran on NBC for about 8 or 9 years. Diagnosis Murder, it felt like it was on for 20, but it wasn't. It was probably on for 13. All I know is that I auditioned for both of those shows every year that they were on and never got cast. Couldn't get cast for the life of me. Drove me nuts. I couldn't get a Diagnosis Murder. Are you kidding me? Well, guess what? No, the answer is no. Your services are not needed, Mr. Fabian. And that just goes to show you also that, you know what, it's not everybody's flavor. And that's okay too, which is even why it's even more important to be open to saying yes to things. I have friends who would not besmirch their resume with doing Xena the Warrior Princess. And for whatever artistic reasons, they thought it was schlocky, it wasn't worth it. That's okay. I can respect that. But I got to go to New Zealand and kiss the girl. So